Well, hello everyone. I am so happy to be able to introduce my dear friend, Philip Hellmich. So Philip is the Director of Peace at the Shift Network and the Chief Architect of the Summer of Peace. Some of you may have participated in that. And the Chief Architect of Yoga Day Summit and the World Peace Library. Philip has dedicated most of his life to peace building, and he has a loving, caring heart that is so amazing and wonderful. So he is a longtime meditator and follower of Yogananda and Kriya Yoga. His presentation tonight is on sacred pilgrimages into the soul of India. So please join me with a warm welcome for Philip.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Olivia. And I also want to thank Sheldon, Helena, Sharon, Michael, everyone for inviting me back here. It's like a homecoming. I just love coming here. Just want to do a technical check. If the timer is going to be set, yeah, thank you. That means we can start at 45. Great, extra minute. It's really touching to be back here, see Heidi and everyone, and Sharon. It's just really, just the depth of integrity and presence is special. So to start this, I invite us to close our eyes, and we'll just do a very brief meditation to invoke a lot of love. So I invite you just to take a deep breath in and hold that breath for a few seconds. And then exhale slowly. And then allow the breath to come in and out on its own. And as you do that, I invite you to bring your attention to your heart and imagine you're breathing in and out through your heart. The breath is coming in and out through the heart, all on its own. And now I invite you to invoke the presence of someone who you love dearly. It could be a parent, a spouse, a child, a sibling, a friend, and just feel that love you have for that person in your heart as you're breathing in and out through the heart. Just feel that love radiating through the heart and throughout the whole body, throughout your whole energy field. Just feeling that love expanding. And now feel that love expand to everyone here. And see if you notice you can feel the collective field of love growing. And now let's invoke the presence of whatever saint or deity is dear to you. Christ, Buddha, Yogananda, Amma, Nandamoya Ma. Just invoke their presence and their love in through your heart, radiating out across this room, across this planet. And when you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes and maintain that sense of deep love. And as we know, there's a lot of science that backs up that we increase our resonance field when we do practices like this. I'm going to be speaking, as Olivia said, about sacred pilgrimages into the soul of India. And yesterday, my dear friend, and there's a quote that I always love starting presentations with, and this will be relevant throughout here from Paramahansa Yogananda. There is a power that will light your way to health, happiness, peace, and success if you will but turn toward that light. And that's going to be a theme we'll see throughout this presentation in the gifts of India. And yesterday, my dear friend Sandra showed the trailer to Awake the Life of Yogananda. And there's a couple quotes from that I want to point out that I feel are pretty relevant to, again, the sacred pilgrimage into the soul of India. The first one is, during the video, if you remember, they said while he, Yogananda, was writing the autobiography of a yogi, we were dropping the first atomic bomb. And then the next quote was, the need for the teachings was more urgent than ever. And Sandra pointed out that Yogananda was sent to the West in 1920 to help spread Kriya Yoga. And when Lahiri Mahashaya, Yogananda's guru, met Yogananda when Yogananda was an infant, he prophesied that Yogananda would take yoga to the West and that yoga would spread around the world to help harmonize humanity. And what I'm going to be pointing out in this presentation is that India's gift to the world, yoga, is helping humanity on a global scale to awaken innate soul qualities of peace, love, wisdom, and compassion, one breath, one posture, one person at a time. So to make this a little bit more intimate, I'll share my own personal story, how I came into yoga and briefly about the peace aspect. I've presented here before, so I'm going to go through this very briefly. Many of you have heard me talk on these things before, but I was not born in India. I was born in Indiana. Large Catholic family. I invite you particularly pay attention to my mother in this photo. And here she had 10 kids, picked up one more later. And Mother Mary, we went to the St. Mary's Church. Mother Mary is really the divine aspect of the mother that we grew up with. And she's guarded our family throughout this time. And this is a more recent photo, which is expanded. And those, you will remember that I was the only planned one of 10, but anyway. And then after college, went off to West Africa, Sierra Leone, West Africa, one of the poorest countries of the world, and just my friends there became my family. And for 4 years, I lived in small bush villages, no electricity, no running water, and that was the start of really my spiritual questioning. Because my friends lived, again, on less than $1 a day, subsistence farmers, and yet they were so connected with community, earth, cycles of nature, and the crops and so forth. It really got me questioning. So when I came back to the United States, I really was like, what is this pursuit of happiness of something outside of myself, and what's the impact of this massive commercialization and consumerism? Because I could see the impact on wars, environment, and so forth. And luckily, when I came back from living in the bush, I met Michael Singer. This is Michael later when he was interviewed by Oprah. And he later wrote the 2 New York Times bestselling books, The Untethered Soul and The Surrender Experiment. And Mickey, he goes by Mickey Singer. And this person is so dear to me because here I am coming out of the bush, West Africa, and he's saying, there's a universal consciousness guiding everything. The hundreds of billions of galaxies, every cell is guided by this. And it really got me questioning. I really was just like, Mickey, what in the world are you talking about? And so that got me questioning, trying different spiritual practices. And then finally, I read the autobiography of yoga. And it's kind of funny because I had tried all these different traditions. And I was so fed up. I was like, I just prayed, I want a 3-year curriculum. I was very specific. God, I want a 3-year curriculum. 2 people recommended the autobiography in the same week, and then one person said, did you know they have a three-year course by mail that you can sign up for? And then when I went back to see Mickey, he then revealed to me that he was a devotee of Yogananda, and that he said, it took me years to realize that Yogananda was pulling my strings. And this was important, so I dove into Kriya Yoga, really asking these questions about the pursuit of happiness, and this became more intense when I joined Search for Common Ground, and then I started going back to Sierra Leone and other countries across sub-Saharan Africa, practicing Kriya Yoga, and then also being exposed to the impact of deadly war. And this is where Yogananda's questions, Yogananda, as Sandra pointed out, is like, wanted to bring Kriya Yoga so we could have a direct personal experience of God. And so going in and out of these conflict zones, I was turning to Yogananda. And God could be an impersonal aspect, peace, joy, bliss. And one of the first signs of peace, here I'm working on peace building, and Yogananda say, peace is the first sign of contacting the soul, and then God. And then God can be personal, such as Divine Mother, aspect of the Anandamoyama, Amma, Durga, or it could be a personal aspect as Jesus, Krishna, Yogananda, again, Anandamoyama, Amma, or any great saints embodying Christ consciousness. So I just dove into this deeper, and this is where the Divine Mother really became awake to me, is going in and out of these conflict zones. And then it provided a lens to look at the peace building. And this is all going to come back to the gifts of India. I could see that there is a spirit of peace, and I could see that there's innate soul qualities of peace, compassion, and forgiveness are being expressed in creative ways appropriate for the cultural context. So going back to what Mickey Singer was saying, there's this universal consciousness that's guiding everything. Even in these conflict zones, it's guiding people, and they're starting to wake up and start to express these soul qualities. And I could see that there was an intersection between science and ancient wisdom with modern peace building, and yet it wasn't being explored consciously. And I was so hungry, just like, I want to dive into this. I want to understand what's going on a deeper level. And so I kept asking these questions, finally had a trip to India in 2008 with the Global Peace Initiative of Women, and they invited me to be a speaker on a panel about media helping to awake the divine feminine, compassion and love in very difficult conflict situations. And Amma was there, and it was the first taste of India I've had this lifetime, and I was just lit up. I just knew I wanted to go back. I made a trip later that year to Rishikesh, and then would be another several years before I'd go back. And so I kept with this question of what is this deep pursuit of happiness, and how can we unleash this innate soul qualities? And how can we do it on a larger scale? Because I'm experiencing it in my own Kriya practice. I'm having, these experiences of peace, bliss, and so forth, seeing the chaotic world. And so I kept asking these questions. 7 years ago, joined the Shift Network. As many of you know, I've interviewed hundreds of people now looking at peace, and got to start to explore peace for one of the first times of really mapping out peace from interpersonal, community, national, international, all the way up. And so we've created this World Peace Library. And finally, the chance to come to India came about when in 2014, the United Nations declared June 21st as the International Day of Yoga. And I knew every cell in my body was like, if the United Nations and Prime Minister Modi of India introduced it, and a record 175 member countries endorsed it. So I'm sitting here like, there's this universal consciousness guiding everything. Yogananda was sent to the West in 1920. Now yoga is spreading around the world. Something's here. So I told my colleagues, we have to do a summit. And they're like, no, we can't because of A, B, and C. I said, well, A, B, C, D, and E is going to happen, and we're going to do a summit. Stephen Dinan got excited. He said, this is a great idea. He says, I know some people in Rishikesh, India, where the Beatles had gone in 1968. There's an ashram. We'll send you there to interview people. And this is where the strings are being pulled. I applied for a visa on Tuesday. It's supposed to take 10 to 15 days. I get it 2 days later on Thursday, and I flew on Saturday in time to be there in Rishikesh, India for the International Yoga Festival. And you can see these flags from countries all around the world here at this yoga festival. And suddenly, I'm in Rishikesh meeting swamis on the banks of the Ganges in the birthplace of yoga, in the foothills of the Himalayas, and just having these powerful experiences of interviewing these beautiful people. And meanwhile, there's people from all these countries practicing yoga, and people from China. And Sadhvi Bhagavati Saraswati, who's one of the heads of the ashram I'll introduce you to in a minute, she has said, interview the people with presence. Forget about the titles, forget about the degrees, focus on presence. And so by doing that, I was having these profound conversations where there was a transmission. And when I came back, we designed a yoga summit, unlike anything that had been done before. I had just been to the birthplace of yoga and part of a global celebration of yoga. Yoga is estimated to be between 5,000 and 10,000 years old. And so we decided to focus this summit on the ancient roots to modern transformation. And something happened we hadn't anticipated. There was a spiritual transmission through the broadcast. When Mickey Singer saw the first one, he wrote to me, and he had a video in there too. He said, this was the greatest contribution to yoga that I have seen. And coming from Mickey Singer meant a lot. And then some of the viewers said, one viewer said the transmission was so strong that she had to go outside and walk around in order to ground to handle all the energy. And then fortunately, the second year we led a tour. Stephen Dinan and David led a tour, sacred tours. Luckily, Sandra came on that one. And then the next 2 years, she and I have been leading tours. And then Sandra has jumped in to help up-level all of the video production. And so what I want to do now is show you a brief video clip that is going to be broadcast this year. Welcome to the Yoga Day Summit, a celebration of the United Nations International Day of Yoga. And Yoga Day Summit is produced by the Shift Network in partnership with many wonderful organizations, including Parmarth Nikatan Ashram. I'm here at Parmarth Nikatan in Rishikesh, India, on the banks of the holy Ganges River. And it is such an honor to have Swami Chidananda Saraswati Ji, the head of Parmarth Nikatan, here to once again open the Yoga Day Summit with a special blessing and message.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorama Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti
Thank you, Swamiji. Any message about the International Day of Yoga and yoga you'd like to share with people?
To me, it's great to have International Day of Yoga. To me, every day is yoga. Yoga means union. Yoga means living consciously. Living with awareness. It's not only me existing on this earth. There are so many species, so many people on this earth are living. What we have to bring through yoga, that consciousness that we are all one family. All those, whether they are animals or bird kingdom or animal kingdom, the river bodies, the trees, the mountains, the water, we are all one family, we are all connected. That consciousness has to be there. Through yoga, we can bring this awareness. People say there is a food shortage, there is a land shortage, there is a water shortage. To me, I think if there is any shortage, is a consciousness shortage. Through yoga, we can bring that consciousness in everything. It means we have to live consciously. What we buy, consciously. What we eat, consciously. What we wear, consciously. Everything, because everything has an impact, whatever we do. So, let through this day of yoga, International Day of Yoga, bring this awareness, bring this consciousness, number one. And yoga is beyond religions. Yoga is secular. Yoga is scientific. Yoga brings harmony between the body, mind and soul. Body, mind and spirit. And that balance is Very important. And yoga brings shift. Shift from the past to the present. Shift from the future to the present. You need a shift. And that shift can be brought through yoga. That shift can be brought through this awareness. And I'm very happy that Shift Network is trying to bring that evolution, that enlightenment, that awareness, that consciousness, where people on one platform can feel we are one family and we have to live together. We are one family. When I say, it means we have to share the pain of each other. It is not us versus them. It is oneness. And today, the music of oneness, the music of harmony, the music of peace, the music of love is needed more than anything else. Through yoga, this can happen. Let there be yoga everywhere. Yoga.
Thank you, Swamiji. Namaste.
I love Swamiji. Being in his presence, I get so blissed just from his presence. Afterwards, one time I went to Sadhvi, who you'll meet in a minute. I was like, how do you handle it? She's like, exactly. There's such a beautiful presence. Now I'm going to bring a little fun in here. This is what Sandra and I have been doing together with turning the Yoga Day Summit really into a journey into India. You to join us on a special tour of India from yogadaysummit.com, and we will be bringing. We are traveling the back roads of India to meet saints and sages so we can share these messages with you. And Sandra, so what's the experience of being in the car here?
Well, as you can tell from the bouncing of the video, it's very bumpy. It's funny, these roads are incredibly windy because we're actually traveling along some of those beautiful vistas in the world on the banks of the Ma Ganga. And the river takes so many twists and turns, so do the roads. And guess what? They're really bumpy. So we bump along to visit a sage, we bump along to visit a saint, and we're actually having an amazing time.
It's an amazing time. You can't believe the people we're meeting.
No.
It's just, so we really invite you to come along with us. This will be a summit like no other yoga summit you've ever seen. yogadaysummit.com, celebrating the United Nations International Day of Yoga and how yoga has spread around the world, with this being the birthplace, the Ganges Himalayas.
And we're celebrating the unity of humanity, which stands for human unity. And that we really experience that here in Rishikesh, and you're part of it. And we love you. Even if you don't know us, we love you.
Yeah.
So join us.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste. I love it. That is so much fun. So we started. So Sandra and I have been leading. So we've been producing the videos, interviewing people. In the last 2 years, Sandra and I have been leading these soul journeys, sacred pilgrimage into the soul of India. So we're doing 2 projects at the same time. And here we are with Swamiji at a special ceremony. And here we are with our guide, Mahavir, and our camera person, Richard. Mahavir, one of the deepest presence, most humility. He became a tour guide when Babaji walked into a hotel and told him to become a tour guide. And he's had these direct encounters with Mahavatar Babaji, so he's been our guide. And so I could say a lot about him and stories about just amazing, and just his presence and deep devotion. And, so during these tours, we go to the Beatles ashram, and here's Swamiji and Sadhviji, who you'll meet in a minute. She's there by Swamiji. We go to other sacred sites, and like Anandamaya Ma's. Here we are at her ashrams. And then people are participating in the yoga festival. There's these teachers here, a couple Kundalini teachers who are I just love these guys. And there's world-renowned people like Muji. And then also, during the tour, we'd meet people that, this man is living on the bank of the Ganges next to the Christ cave that Sandra showed us yesterday. And he'd been a lawyer at the Supreme Court. Now he's a sannyasi. And so we'd meet this authentic essence of India. And then there'd be these shrines to the Divine Mother, Durga, here. And there's something so powerful to be in a place where the sacred is the priority, that deep devotion. And for thousands of years, and so there's this vibrational field that is built up. And then it's side by side with markets with cows going through the markets, so it's like a full-on experience. And then this last year, we meet people who were there in India because they watched the Yoga Day Summit, like Claudia, who's from Ghana in London. And we have a fun little video clip of her. If there's time, we'll show that. But, she's like, oh my God, Sandra, Philip. First, she walked up and said, are you Stephen? Thinking I was Stephen Dinan. Anyway, but then, she's like, I'm here. She's like, I watched the entire Yoga Day Summit, and it changed her life. And then there's these festival activities, like this is celebrating Holi, Festival of Dyes and Colors. So the ashram has these organic dyes, and people from around the world, different countries, are participating in this experience. And it's something beautiful. Again, we're in the birthplace of yoga. People from around the world have come back there to celebrate yoga. And yet, at the same time, Sadhvi would say, they think they're coming here from a yoga festival. They're coming here for the Ganges and the presence. And so there's this deep spiritual vibration bringing people from around the world. Again, as Sandra mentioned, 2,000 people. And then side by side with Bruce Lipton and world-renowned yoga teachers, Gloria Mathan, Erica Hoffman. So here's Bruce, and I love Bruce. And it was so much fun. And Sandra interviewed him this year. I interviewed him last year. And he says, okay, I'm going to explain science to you in a nutshell. There's good vibes and bad vibes. And when people with good vibes get together with other people, good vibes, it becomes exponential. And then I asked him about the power of Rishikesh. He says, okay, you've got good vibes for thousands of years, deep devotional practice. You have people from nearly 100 countries, more positive vibes, and it just becomes stronger. And then Sadhvi Bhagavati Saraswati Ji. Sandra knows I just love Sadhvi. She'd been a PhD student at Stanford in psychology, went to Rishikesh, India, put her feet in the Ganges, had a type of awakening, and then returned and has been a Swamini there working side by side. And Sadhvi, she's the CEO running a 1,000-room ashram and incredibly busy, and yet has this deep spiritual practice. And so what I want to share with you now is Sadhvi often would tell us to go meditate by the Ganges. And she would say, focus on presence. And so this clip here, she's going to talk about, even though there's this motion, she's going to talk about the stillness and how the Ganges taught her about stillness and motion.
You and me. And so that automatically branches out then into service. Again, not because we're great humanitarians.
Oh, wait one second. Let me get the right video here. Okay, stillness, here we go. It's the same setting. All right. Here we go.
Again, not because we're great humanitarians, but because that's the spiritual practice.
Wait, I'm still getting the wrong.
The world is the self. The example that I always
here.
give on this is if I trip and I fall and I hurt my right leg, my left leg will pick up the extra weight.
Okay, excuse me. All right. See if I can do it this time. Okay. Thank you for being patient. Here we go.
Thanks of Ganga. Doing what I love to do, which is just an open-eyed meditation of watching Ganga. And my eyes were focused on a rock in the water, and the water was rushing over the rock, but I could see the rock. There was a little piece on the top of the rock that wasn't always covered, depended on the size of the wave that would come over. And as I was focusing on that, I had this awareness of, wow, Ganga's flowing so fast. So actually, that which I'm meditating upon is in constant motion. There's no stillness in this image at all. And yet, the image is constant. What I was looking at stayed the same, the rock, Ganga. And yet, it was moving. It was in constant motion. The molecules of water over the rock every split second were different. And yet, it was still. And the awareness came, wow. What it means is that even though the form keeps changing, the molecules of the water that are washing over the rock keep changing, the essence is the same. And if I can anchor myself to essence instead of form, there's a stillness. If I'm anchored to each molecule of water, then my attention is going to go. But if I'm anchored to essence, Ganga over water. Ganga over rock. That's the essence. And even on a deeper essence, just Ganga. The deeper essence, the divine, Ganga's the goddess.
Okay, this is what I really love about going to India, is that we're able to have these kind of conversations and then also experience it directly. So we often spent a lot of time meditating on the Ganges. And in the morning, we'd go down there before 5 o'clock in the morning and we'd just sit here. Here's a time lapse, so you can kind of see what the experience is over an hour or so of just sitting there by the Ganges in that deep presence. And you can see people coming and going, and there are people coming down doing devotional offerings. And then the sun is slowly coming up, and it's the same experience that these saints and sages have had over thousands of years. That's the transmission. That's the transmission people who are coming on the trips experiencing. That's the transmission that Sandra and I have been really working to bring to the Yoga Day Summit. And how this comes into play. So when we get into that stillness, in the Bible it says, be still and know that I am God. When we were with this Swami Brahmdev over at Ora Valley, he's a devotee of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. And that's Richard again. I like getting Richard in front of the camera because he likes to be behind the camera. I was interviewing Swami about the world situation. And he says it's all natural intelligence. So when we go into that place of stillness, we're able to tap into that universal consciousness, that wisdom, that love, that compassion. And he says Trump and all of this, it's all natural intelligence. It's all manifesting. Same thing that Mickey's saying. There's that universal consciousness manifesting everything. And he says, natural intelligence, sometimes she'll use a hammer, a war, economic crisis, or environmental destruction in order to move us along. And he says, we're on an ascending age, and eventually humanity will evolve. And so this idea of the natural intelligence, and then, so here we are looking at the ancient roots and then the modern transformation. And then there's these world-renowned yoga teachers. And one who I love, that we love dearly, is Kia Miller. Has anyone heard of Kia Miller? She's a world-renowned Kundalini yoga teacher. And so I want to show you a brief clip where, and she was born on the Falklands Islands and was raised there and was there during the Falkland Wars as a 12, 13-year-old girl at the time. And then so she's dedicated her life to really exploring this intersection of awakening consciousness and then taking action in the world. And so here's a brief clip here where we're exploring the relevance of this ancient wisdom and awakening to natural intelligence.
To the chaos, if we're reacting to everything and we're pointing the finger and we're saying, you are who is wrong, and we're not accepting that what witnessing right now is a reflection of our own disowned material, collectively speaking.
Yes.
And so it's going to require all of those who feel the drive to understand themselves and to recognize their own position and potentiality in this life and in this phase of evolution. We all need to become really committed to our own personal practice, our own personal awakening, and taking self-responsibility for everything that's happening to us, so that we collectively can help to raise that kind of unified field of consciousness, so that others can slip into it more easily. What I experienced in Rishikesh here is meditation is so easy, because there have been people here meditating, holding this certain field of consciousness for so long that when we come into this area, it's like you just slip into it. I feel like if we collectively can do that, those of us who feel the drive, there's enough of us that we can actually really help to raise the collective consciousness, if you like.
Yeah, I'm really moved by this because you know, the reactions and the amount of fear that's happening, and yet you're describing taking self-responsibility, using these scientific practices, and people will have the different modalities that work for them, being committed to that, and when the reactions come up, keep from blaming, doing the practice, let the practices release, and getting into a truer self. And then that presence can be felt. I mean, we were talking with Bruce Lip. So you can see that Sandra and I, through these interviews, were able to really start to explore, okay, how is this ancient science applicable to today? How is it that this natural spread of yoga and meditation around the world, how is it really starting to transform people one breath at a time? And that what we've found is by doing these interviews through the Yoga Day Summit, you know, we've been able to highlight the fact that yoga is an ancient science. You know, it is a science. Science meaning you don't have to listen to this dogma and theory. You do it yourself and look to your own direct experience. Modern science is validating the benefits of yoga. Modern life is driving people to ancient yoga. And this we found, I mean, again, 2 years ago, there were people from 101 countries, and we would hear people would come into yoga through different doorways. I'm stressed out, I had a crisis, a health crisis, oh, I just want better abs, you know, whatever reason it is, people come into yoga, and then they'd notice you do yoga, and then yoga does you. This ancient science, and again, is sent by these masters. Yogananda, the Beatles go to Rishikesh, Maharishi, they come back. B.K. Iyengar, these masters. And so there's the invisible masters guiding the spread of this around the world. And when yoga starts to transform them, they start to notice they start getting clarified their life purpose. And their life purpose, this is the cool part, they're starting to have expanded sense of self. Their life purpose starts to include people beyond themselves. And there's a wonderful yogi named Richard Miller who's working with veterans. And it's the Veteran Administration, he's scientifically saying, when you do this, you awaken this part of the brain, which then increases the sense of oneness, and then the part of the healing, and he said people have life purpose, and then they start working on life purpose to help others, and that facilitates the healing. This is modern science and ancient wisdom coming together in very practical ways, and it's being expressed with veterans, NFL players who have been paralyzed. It's just spreading. And then people find out yoga goes far beyond the mat. It's a way of life. Yoga is as deep as a person will go until finally we surrender to just being yoga. It's a catalyst for change. It's helping people heal body, mind, and spirit. And then it leads to selfless service. And this is the part, let me see if this video from Sadhvaji will come up. If not, we'll skip that one. And I just love the way she says this here. Let me see if I have it.
You as separate, or you as needy, or you as hungry
Okay.
from yoga. See, if I, in my meditation, or I, in whatever aspect of yoga I'm practicing, on my mat, on my cushion, if I have even the glimpse of an experience of my oneness with the universe, then the most natural byproduct of that, when I open my eyes and stand up, is to serve that creation. So it's not about us over here serving them over there, or us as great humanitarians serving the needy. It's about serving the self. So I'm not serving you as separate, or you as needy, or you as hungry. I'm serving me in you. Because as the most natural byproduct of my meditation, of my yoga, I experience myself in you. I experience you in me. And so that automatically branches out then into service. Again, not because we're great humanitarians, but because that's the spiritual practice. The world is the self. You know, the example that I...
Okay, this is where it really gets moving for me. When Sandra and I design these trips, we tell people we're going to take them into an experience of seva, of selfless service, from a yogic perspective. And again, going from idea to direct experience, here is the opportunity for people to start experience this expanded sense of self. Again, peace is the first indicator of really contacting the soul. And then as we go into that and go deeper into that, and again, science is saying which part of the brains get activated to expand the sense of self, then it's God serving God. And it just becomes so beautiful. And the ashram there where we stay has dozens of projects serving lots of people. And when we design the trip, we always make sure there's some opportunity to learn, directly interact. Now I want to bring this, so coming back to, before I go to the closing part here, going back to the beginning of, talking about how these masters were sent to the West to spread yoga, to help harmonize humanity. United Nations, 175 countries endorsed it. Yoga is spreading around the world. It's spreading in different ways. Some ways we may have judgments about, but you can let go of those because it's being guided. It's being, and people are coming into it from different ways. And this is what really gives me hope. So this is happening. The peace building is starting to express, soul qualities. And so all of this awakening is happening. And it's hard to think, for me, to imagine what the world's going to be like when the universal consciousness is guiding it to an awakening in a way that we can never imagine. And Llewellyn Vailly, a Sufi mystic, has talked about that there could come a time through technology that people will be able to have an experience of oneness, where it would be a collective consciousness that's awakening. Now to bring this a little bit more personal, when we went to, before I went to India, the week before I went to India, I flew home to see my mom. And my family said, come home. We don't know if she'll live while you're in India. She's still alive. She's in the hospital again tonight. So I went there with this heavy heart and would spend these hours by the Ganges, knowing this is the Divine Mother. And that Yogananda, when he lost his mother, that drove him to seeking the Divine Mother. Ananda Moima's body is entombed here. When we went in there, it took me by surprise. Prior to going in there, I'm working on logistics, we've got 16 people, cars, vehicles, Walk in there, and just boom. It was just it was this unconditional love. And I just wept and wept and wept and sat there and meditated. And all I could hear is, I've been your mother for lifetimes. And I could just feel Yogananda, as a young boy losing his mother, driving him nearly mad, and then getting on his knees and praying to the Divine Mother. And then here we are in India. And if any of you, I encourage you to read anything about Nanda Mayama. I mean, she was the embodiment of the Divine Mother. And just to be in that presence, in that field, and feeling that experience of just this unconditional love from the Divine Mother. And knowing, I have my heart pain, which one of the swamis that I interviewed there said, take that heart pain, the individual heart pain, and have that be the heart pain of the soul feeling separate from God, or feeling separate from the soul. And so this trip, these trips have been powerfully transformative, not always easy. Because when getting in these intense energetic fields, things get activated. And then there's this experience of being held by something much bigger than me or anyone. And to be in that field and to feel that unconditional love. And then to just feel on a cellular level, this technology is spread around the world. There's lots of heartbreak. There's lots of pain around the world. And people are going from pain, looking for solutions, and they're going into yoga, they're going into meditation, and they're being held by we are being held by these great masters. And so Sandra and I have loved taking people on these adventures. And you saw the closing video last night. And coming back to Paramahansa Yogananda, there is a power that will light your way to health, happiness, peace, and success if you will but turn toward that light. And so that, my friends, is a glimpse into the sacred pilgrimages into the soul of India.